Welcome to the Playing Hooky podcast with your hosts Rachel and Nathan, brought to you by UtilityMuffinLabs.com. Consistently rated adequate. Before we go, hey, how are you? How are we doing? Why don't we talk about what happened, what we're doing?
Oh, we're re-recording Playing Hooky, the Playing Hooky podcast, because one of the chords was bad, and we recorded a whole hour-long episode, and then every, 3 seconds, it was...
Yeah, so the problem was there was chunks of 3 or 4 minutes of good podcast in there. But in the middle of them, one of the XLR cables was bad. So here's a word of advice for anybody listening who's like, I want to start a podcast. Okay, there's a median amount of money you should spend on XLR cables. Don't buy cheap ones. Cheap ones are fucking trash.
Yeah.
Also, you can avoid spending an astronomical amount of money, like going to Guitar Center. Amazon Basics are fantastic. They're actually really good cables, but anything that's cheaper than an Amazon Basic is trash. Don't buy it, because that's how you ruin podcasts, like I did. And you'd think after 5 years of doing this, I would know, make sure there aren't any issues. But turns out, even I, in my
It's okay.
4 or 5 years of doing this,
We caught it in the quality control. It's all good.
Yeah. So basically,
and now we've had additional time to do more research on the things that we talked about.
Yeah.
So I'll break it down for you guys really simply. And basically, let's just roll with it, because I'm going to feel constantly like I'm repeating myself, but I'm not, because this is the first time they've heard this. So basically what happened was I brought something to the table, and Nate was racking his brains what am I going to bring to complement this? And then a beautiful thing happened, and that our whole entire culture and population was gifted with a very strange documentary series. And so we decided, rather than Nate brings something and Rachel brings something, we'll just go with the thing I brought and then spend the rest of the episode kind of talking about this crazy docu-series, which, to give it away, we're going to be talking about Tiger King.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which
Absolutely.
That is the thing that I brought to the table. Having watched now about 4.5 seasons of it, my mind is even more blown away that you'd never seen it before, because I think there's not a bad episode really that we've watched.
The only thing that I saw of the show was, I think at some point, it was on Netflix, and it's been gone for a little while, at least I think a year it's been gone.
Yeah, for a bit.
But so many people had been like, dude, you should watch this, you should watch this, you should watch this. And I've tried very diligently to stop being a dismissive Dylan. When people are like, you should watch a thing, I'm trying much harder to be like, okay, I will give it a try, even if I didn't come about discovering it independently, because it's a shitty personality trait that I've had. So anyways, I watched 2 episodes of it, and they were random episodes in the middle of the first season. They weren't even the first. I dropped my bottle of water.
That's okay. Did you see how angry it made me though?
Yeah.
It startled me, and my eyes went to rage because because it scared me. So rather than jumping and getting scared, I just looked at it like I was going to murder it.
It's like, why did you do that?
No, didn't look at you. I was going to murder the water bottle. It's like I was mad at the water bottle for being an inanimate. I can't say that word. Inanimate.
Inanimate. Inanimate. It is not animated. It's inanimate.
Inanimate.
Maybe. I could be pronouncing it incorrectly too.
I don't think so. I think
it turns out there's a lot of words I think are one way that aren't.
No, it's like banana. You got to practice to know when to stop it.
No.
Like banana. No,
it's banana.
Banana.
Are we talking about a show?
Okay, sorry. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Continue.
So what is the show about?
What is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia about? Mm-hmm. So basically, I was looking up to see how many seasons there were, but I wasn't able to Google that fast enough for you to decide you were done talking and knocking over bottles. So that's all right. So anyway, the show is about this group of friends who own a bar in Philadelphia, and they're what kind of in the universe of the show, they're kind of called the gang. So a lot of the episodes will be like, the gang does this or the gang gets this. And the gang is comprised of 3 guys in their, we'll say like, the show has like, I think 15 seasons. So like when it started in 2005, 2006, they were in their late 20s. So 3 guys in their late 20s all the way up to probably their early 40s now. Mm-hmm. And then a girl and then like another guy, Frank. Mm-hmm. So you've got the core dudes who make up the gang are Mac, Charlie, and Dennis. Dennis has a twin sister named Deandra, sometimes called Dee, sometimes called Sweet Dee in some of the earlier seasons. Yeah. So they're twins. And then they all went to high school together, so they're all friends from high school. It's kind of how they all know each other. But the 3 guys went in together and bought this bar, Patty's Pub, at some point before the series even starts. Yeah. So they start the series off already owning this bar, and so these 3 guys, Charlie, Mac, and Dennis, they all kind of like fill a different role in the group. Dennis is very much like a narcissist. He's kind of maybe even a sociopath, very vain, very obsessed with himself, smart, cunning, but really full of himself, and that's his downfall. That's his weakness. Right. Mac is a really super like hyper stereotype of a really insecure guy. Like he's obsessed with kind of masculinity and being strong. He's always trying to show off and get the approval of other men, especially other like male authority figures.
I definitely was friends with a guy in high school who was very much like that guy.
Yeah. Like everyone has probably met someone a little bit like Mac in their life, but Mac is like the ultimate of that stereotype of like an insecure dude that has some daddy issues.
If he wore like a bandana, then it would be the same person, basically.
Yeah, always like really bossy, always has to be the expert on everything. Always wanting to prove what a badass he is, but also super duper insecure. And then there's Charlie, who is kind of like always being shit on, but also is enough of a terrible person and a kind of a conniving little asshole that as soon as they start to have you feel bad for Charlie, he does something to flip it. But Charlie is definitely like taking the dump on throughout the show. So much so to the point that like work around the bar that no one wants to do is called Charlie work. So cleaning the toilets or changing a fuse in the fuse box that's like could possibly electrocute you, or killing rats in the basement. That's Charlie work. Charlie is like definitely an alcoholic. He has really questionable hygiene. They're always talking about how he has bad breath. There's an episode where he just starts pulling his teeth out of his mouth, getting surprised. He's like, "Oh, I don't think that's supposed to happen." They're like, "For the love of God,
how are those coming out so easily?"
Yeah, he's like, "Do you think they're my baby teeth?" Like Charlie is like he is a quote abortion survivor. Like he has like the hardest.
Yeah. So folks understand, like the way that I can describe this show is it's very much like it takes place in the real world, and they are like cartoon characters in the real world.
Right.
It's like the real world exists and things happen in it, but it just like doesn't seem to affect them the same way.
Right. So like for example, there's an episode where they go to a bank to get a loan and they're acting incredibly sexist, incredibly crazy. And like the people are reacting to them as you or I would, as like a normal person in the real world were, but they're like living in their own bubble where they think their behavior is acceptable.
Can you go get your boss? My boss is a woman too. And they're like,
really?
I find that hard to believe.
I've never been to a bank like this before. All right. So then the female in the group is Deandra. She is Dennis's twin sister, and they're both very tall and blonde and like attractive. But Dee is kind of almost like the female version of Mac in that she is always looking for people's approval. She's always trying. She's probably the most realistic of all of them in that like she understands that their behavior is unacceptable, she kind of has like, she understands a moral compass. She just doesn't follow it very often.
Yeah,
she's a little bit of like, I'm not going to say she's a slut or a whore, but she ends up finding herself in situations.
Everybody else would call her
but
that.
where everyone else would call her that. She is a little bit desperate and a little bit sad as well.
Everybody's always calling her ugly.
Yeah, calling her a bird. That she's like, so it's like for as much shit as Charlie gets, Dee gets it worse and harder, I think.
It's interesting in the writing of the show because I felt like at the onset of the show, like in the first season, Dee was very much written like the only person with any sense, like who,
like she was the voice of the audience.
She was the voice of reason, and then it felt like as they went on with the show, they were like, forget that idea. We'll just make her
kind of crazy,
a scum. Crazy person as well.
Yeah, she's just a female scumbag. And then the fifth member of the gang is Frank, who kind of is played by Danny DeVito. And he shows up in the middle of the first season, and he's actually Dennis and Deandra's father, which is a little weird because they're very tall and blonde and like attractive. Right. And Danny DeVito is shorter and has black hair. And he's Danny DeVito. You've seen him. It's not that he's an ugly man. He's just a small Italian man, small chubby Italian man.
He's Danny DeVito.
Right. So then it's like, you're not really like expecting to question it, but you should be questioning it because it's revealed in like I think season 2 or season 3 that he might not be their father. And then like as soon as like the question rises in their mind that he might not be their father, they immediately start treating him as if he's not and he's just one of the gang. Right. But then there's like some question about like there may be someone else in the group who he is related to, and it's very ambiguous, but the ambiguity is part of the comedy. So each episode like is a little mini adventure that this group of misfits finds themselves in. And usually karma is a bitch, and it's kind of like satisfying in the end because if they've done all these horrible things, usually they get what's coming to them. But it's pretty funny. It's incredibly funny. It's like one of the most hilarious shows I've ever seen.
It is really incredibly offensive. It is very what would you say, like scatological? Is that the right way of putting it?
I don't know.
Lots of dicks, farts.
Yeah, it's
poop humor.
A lot of base humor. The gang, another like area where a lot of comedy comes from throughout different episodes is the gang is always really paranoid of being perceived as racist, but they're always doing something that is racist. And like, that's pretty funny because they're always like accusing each other and walking on eggshells of saying or doing something that's racist. Like there's one episode where a couple of them find themselves in a morgue, and for reasons I won't get into, they feel like they need to prove that they haven't become cannibals by eating a piece of a dead body. And then they can't bring themselves to cut off a piece of a dead body to eat it. And they're like, but like, there's like 2 dead bodies in the morgue, and one is a black guy and one is a white guy. And they're like, okay, just throwing this out there though, like if we don't eat him, it's not because we're racist, right? And they're like, no, we're not racist. Like, it's just he doesn't look good to me. Like, and then he's like, well, the other guy, the white guy doesn't, like, he looks a little bit better, I gotta say. And then they like go over and they're like, I can't do it. And I can't do it. I can't. And like, then they're like, well, at least we know we're not racist. It's just that we don't want to eat dead bodies. It's ridiculous. And it's a really funny show.
So I think a part of our big elephant in the room, that we talked about in the last one, but it's still ongoing, is kind of like our shelter in place, stay at home situation because of COVID-19, coronavirus, and all that.
Yeah,
and we actually like right after this stuff started to kind of, right after we got the warning, you had mentioned like, oh well, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And so we contacted Half Price Books, and we did like a drive-up service. Yeah. And you bought like 7 seasons of it. So.
Yeah. So I called up Half Price Books. I think since that time, most of the stores have closed, and it's actually really sad because a long time ago in another life, I used to work at Half Price Books, and some of the people that I worked with still work there. And I'm friends with them on Facebook, and I saw that they furloughed like thousands of their employees because they just can't obviously they can't keep the stores open in most of the states because they've been closed. But hopefully when things get back to, I don't want to say get back to normal, But when things change from how they are now, a lot of those people will still have jobs and be able to go back to work. But anyway, like before the shelter in place had taken effect, where a lot of people's jobs that weren't in the food industry were affected, Half Price Books was still doing like curbside service. So if you called ahead of time and were like, hey, do you have this? They'd be like, yes. And then you could pay with your credit card and they would bring it out to your car. And you'd never have to like touch any stuff. Right. Yeah. And that was awesome. So I called them and I was like, hey, do you guys have any seasons of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? And they're like, oh yeah, let us check. And he's like, I got seasons 1 through 7. And I was like, I'll take them because you can't get them for free anywhere. I think the only place you can watch them online,
maybe
like
Hulu?
Is Hulu. Yeah, I think Hulu's the only service that has it. So if you have a subscription to Hulu, that's awesome. If not, you can buy the seasons on Amazon. And I'm sure some of you have other ways that you get media. I like to pay for things. Nothing against people who like download stuff. But it's mostly just like
kind of you to say.
Yeah, like I mean, it's like I'm not trying to judge anybody who does it because I know a lot of people who do it, and like I'm not completely guilt free. Like I've done it too, but it's just like such a hard time that I feel like if you have the means to pay for something right now, you should, just so we can try to keep things. I don't know if that even makes sense or if that's justifiable. But basically, what I'm saying is, if I don't have to steal something, I try not to steal it.
It makes sense to me. I am 100% in favor of spending your money on the things you enjoy.
Yeah.
I am 100% in favor of like actually purchasing. I'm a physical media person. And when I was younger,
and I'm really not, that's the thing. Yeah, like I prefer not to buy the stuff.
And I'm not saying that like everybody needs to go out and buy a DVD, right? There's plenty of people that don't own Blu-ray players, don't own DVD players, they don't own a computer that even has a disc drive anymore. So I get like, just having things on digital. My thing though is people made that product. People made the music you listen to. People wrote the books that you read. People, filmed and busted their ass to make the TV show, to make the and the
YouTube video. Yeah.
And, when I was like 20 years old, I was like, oh, free music, awesome. But that's because I lacked the maturity to understand like it's not free. You're stealing it. You're taking it from someone who worked really hard and is now not going to get paid. Now, however, I will say this. I am accepting of people who might download a show and go, oh, I like it, and then buy that product. Or might download an MP3 and then go, okay, well, I'm going to get the rest of the album. Or pays for a subscription to a streaming service.
Right.
But to me, bootlegging is bootlegging.
Yeah.
If I wrote a book and it was in a store and you stole it, to me, that's no different. So I'm fully an advocate of paying for the things that you enjoy. And if you can't afford it, then,
borrow it from a friend.
Yeah.
Go to a library.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a good point too. I think a lot of libraries have a lot of stuff online now. So you could probably rent, I know you can rent audiobooks from the library.
You can rent DVDs from most modern libraries.
No, but I mean like if, like online, I think a lot of them have digital like avenues to do that. Anyway, absolutely. Enough of us being luxury and judgy. Sorry about that. Hopefully you weren't put off by our...
I don't care if people...
all I'm saying is that like...
If you're like, I steal and you should accept that, I don't really care.
I'm not an angel, but I'm also kind of trying to justify why I dropped a lot of money on those. Also, like did a very, very small thing, and that maybe it justified for just a couple more days or a couple more hours for those folks at Half Price Books to have jobs, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like I could have downloaded it, and it was cheaper to get it there than it was to download it from Amazon. Because,
That's the interesting thing now that's kind of become the norm is that it's actually less expensive for me to get into a car and drive to a place and find a physical copy of it than it is to download it to my TV.
Yeah.
And for me as like a hobbyist, a collector, I like that. I appreciate that it is either equal price or less expensive for me to go and have a physical thing because I'm a tangible person.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm probably never going to be completely out of. I still download and stream music, but I also buy music because I like to have a physical thing in my hand. So
Yeah. No, that's all fair. But anyway, enough of that. So you've seen up about 4.5 seasons now.
I'm just shocked that I didn't see it before.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we talked about in, I think, pretty decent detail in the original podcast that no one else will hear. But it just kind of was ridiculous that this show, which really kind of like, I have kind of an immature sense of humor in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like poop jokes, fart jokes, dick jokes. Like I like that. I think that stuff amuses me so much. And the fact that I went this long without having seen that show is a little ridiculous to even think. Like, this has been out here for 15 seasons and you've watched 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And also the episode that I saw, the one that I remembered distinctly, was the one where Dennis shows up at Charlie's house and Charlie's like, oh, I got cancer.
Yeah.
And Dennis is like, oh, man, that's terrible. Do you think I could get that basketball that I came over for? Like, waiting around. Like, this is weird and uncomfortable.
It's like, I'm totally here for you, but there are people waiting for me in the car. I got to go. Oh, yeah. It's pretty funny. It looks like, according to Wikipedia, there are 14 seasons currently. But that could be wrong.
No, I mean.
But yeah.
If it's on Wikipedia, it's probably true.
Yeah, it looks like 14 seasons. The last season, I think, aired in 2019, or the most recent season.
Maybe it's like it's been picked up for a 15th season. Either way, I haven't.
I'm glad.
Seen 4.
Yeah,
so
we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think I've seen the first 12 seasons. But anyway, so like, what do you like about it? What are some of your favorite things about it?
You can definitely tell that there's a lot of kind of ad-libbing. Like, obviously it's a scripted show, but you can tell that these guys, and I just mean guys in the sense that all the actors on the show are really funny people who are, good at delivering and working off of each other. So I think the writing is actually really smart for as like crude and as base as it is. And it's so ridiculous that it's like it pushes the offensive boundary so far that it's like completely nonsensical.
Right.
And it's just the premises are so outlandish. We also talked about this. It definitely has a very like Seinfeld feel. It's not about anything. It's just people that own a bar and work in a bar and the like mishaps and adventures that they get into.
Yeah, but it's like Seinfeld if like they were even worse people.
Yeah, it's like Seinfeld if everyone there was doing like methamphetamines.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like it's even described on the Wikipedia. Like, it's been described as Seinfeld on crack. But it's very much like the same type of humor, but the crudeness is like turned way up. Right.
I think another thing that you mentioned on the other day when we recorded this was, oh gosh, I had a brain fart. I can't remember what I was going to say, but that's okay. So who's your favorite person in the gang?
My favorite person in the gang is probably Charlie.
Yeah, he's my favorite too.
Yeah, because like Charlie is a dangerous idiot.
Yes.
Charlie is like a fun character. The actor's name is Charlie Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen
the actor's name I think is Charlie Day. Charlie
but
Day.
He plays Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The character's Charlie Kelly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the actor, I've seen him in a few other things like outside of that. So like I really didn't know him before, but like I have seen him in a couple of things. But I really like him in the show. I didn't know he played like a simple, like kind of violent individual. I didn't know the character in the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just funny because he does get all the shit. He does. He gets all the crap rolls down to him. But it's just an interesting, funny character. The whole Green Man thing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really.
Yeah, that made me think of the thing that I forgot was that there were a lot of this show has a lot of pop culture references, and there are some that I didn't get until you and I got together and we started sharing things. There's, for example, in the second season, I think there's like a pretty big Die Hard reference to the movie Die Hard.
Yeah.
But then, and that kind of continues throughout. Like there will be an episode in a later season that is just the whole thing is a reference to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because Danny DeVito was in that. But you were saying the other day that there were a lot of cultural references because of this show that you never got that now you get.
Yeah, the Green Man was one of them. Like I was just like, okay, there's a dude in a green spandex suit. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is they don't really, they're like, hey, remember how you do this thing, right? They don't, it's not like something that happens spontaneously.
Right.
It's like an inside thing that they know about. And then you get thrust into it. And the show is really good for that, where like, you know, they're like, don't do this thing that you always do, that we, the audience, have never experienced. And then that character will go and just do it to death.
Right. And that's one thing that I think makes the show so enjoyable is that you can really immerse yourself in it because they've thought about the whole world, right? Like the whole backstory and like they all know it and everything that they did in high school kind of affects and impacts their behavior now. They've thought it all through. It's almost like the life that happens in the gang when the TV goes off in between episodes. It's like it's always happening and informing the next episode and informing the next episode. Yeah. So it's pretty. It's
a really
genius.
cool show.
Yeah.
I feel like a dummy for not having watched it beforehand, but now I don't have to worry about it because we got 3.5 more seasons to watch.
Yeah. So. And who knows if we're having a hankering for it? You know, we could maybe buy some more.
As this blows over.
Yeah. All right. So It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We both love it. It's one of my all-time favorite TV shows.
It is one of the best things you've brought to the table.
Really?
Yes, it absolutely is one of the more enjoyable things you've brought to the table.
Nice.
That I truly appreciate you bringing to the table.
You know what other thing I was thinking about earlier today that I said I was going to show you that we haven't seen yet, and I'm just going to throw this out there now before I forget about it. Future episode, A Fish Called Wanda. You got to come back at me with a movie to complement that.
So I here's what this taught me. Movies, I'm good. I have like a list of movies where I can be like, oh, I got something in that genre, I got something in this genre. It turns out most of the shows I watch aren't very funny. Most of the shows I watch are kind of like dour and sad and dramatic. Like all of my we were like, what about if we do It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and 6 Feet Under? Because 6 Feet Under is a show I like and I want you to watch. But it turns out that show's really fucking depressing.
All right, it's about morticians.
And here's another thing that I've learned: depressing shit isn't real appropriate right now.
It's just not something I want to indulge in. Yeah.
No. Who wants to have to be home all day long and then watch a show where they're like, oh, this sucks. So, you know, we watched this other show though, The Tiger King.
Yeah.
And it's got a long, if you have Netflix, you've seen it. It's popped up. Every meme right now is about it. This show, there are some depressing things about it, but
Tiger King,
by and large, it's not just like a drag.
No, it's just so weird.
Yeah.
It is true crime. It's all real, which is so weird that it's all true. If you haven't,
depending on who you talk to. But,
tell me.
No, so you know, I've been reading after I've watched it, and of course, every person that's been portrayed in here disagrees with how they've been portrayed.
Oh yeah,
which makes me think it's all true.
Yeah.
But one of the major ones is Carol Baskin, who actually wrote this long blog post about how she was under the impression it was one thing and she was kind of misled, but that's a whole other podcast, I believe.
I'm sure people have dedicated podcasts to it already.
But this is just this show, which I got to admit, unless everybody on the internet that we talked to wasn't like, you need to watch this, I probably wouldn't have even watched it.
No, I think I definitely also felt some peer pressure. Well, here's how it came about even that we even watched it. So I had a birthday pretty recently, and Like, obviously, can't go out, can't do anything. We haven't seen any of our friends. My mom texted me today, in fact. She's like, just be really careful when you go out and see friends. I'm like, oh, no, Mom, you don't understand. I've not seen anyone except our roommate and Nathan since March 13th. Like, I've not hung out with anybody. And she's like, oh, okay, good girl. But anyway, so we didn't go out. We didn't do anything. But one of my, like, good friends, she's like, hey, do you want to do, like, a Netflix party? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds fun. And I was like, well, I'm hearing a lot of people say that Tiger King is something we should watch, but I don't know anything about it. And my friend was like, oh no, I don't think I can watch that. And I'm like, why? And she's like, well, here's what I heard. I heard that there's murder and like orgies and like someone feeds a human to a tiger and like all of these things. And she's like, I think it would just be like really disturbing. And since I'm home by myself, I don't want to watch anything that's like going to give me nightmares. And I'm like, it couldn't be that bad. I'm like, it just sounds like, because I'd heard like the only thing I'd heard about it up until that point was the Stefan meme from like SNL, where it's like Stefan's like the guy who's like, this week's hottest club in New York is this, but it was like Stefan, and underneath it was like, it's got gay sex, tigers, polygamy, like all the, you know, and I was like, oh wow, this show sounds crazy. And then everyone kept saying how crazy it was and how they couldn't believe it was true. And I was like, okay, here's what I'll do. I was like, I'm going to watch an episode and I'm going to tell my friend, because like, I'm not scared. I was like, I'm going to watch an episode. I'm going to tell my friend whether or not it's something I think she would like, because other people have said, I don't think you would like it. You should stay away from it. But I think she's tougher than a lot of people think she is. So I was like, we'll watch it. So I was like, hey, Nate, you want to just watch an episode of this while we eat dinner the other night? And he's like, okay, yeah, fine. So it was more like, I was like, I'm going to pre-screen this and give my friend the down low on what's really up with this show. I think people were right. I don't think she would like it, but I think it was probably good judgment on her part that she probably didn't indulge. But that being said, it's not as crazy. It's not as sensational as what you think it might be, but it definitely sucks you in because it is so unbelievable. Like, it's a story that's so crazy. No one would make it up.
There's so many twists and turns. It makes you go, like, when you're like, oh man, I think I finally got a handle on this. And they're like, but wait, there's more.
Right.
And then you're like, who the hell is this guy with the weird lip mustache, long ponytail?
Yeah.
With a cult of tiger wit. What the hell is going on? Okay.
Right.
All right. Let me just buckle up.
So rather than kind of skirt along the edges of it, we're going to talk a little bit about it in more detail, and there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet and you want to watch it, but you don't want it to be spoiled, go watch it now and then come back and listen to the rest of this. So starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So at the end of it, he goes to prison.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask you before we get into anything else.
Yeah.
Because this is now what is the hotly debated sort of thing about the Tiger King.
Okay.
Do you think Joe Exotic should be in prison? Do you think he was framed? Do you think he was set up? Do you think he should be freed? Because the big thing on the internet seems to be people rallying for his release from prison.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what I think. I think he got a raw deal. I think he was singled out. And I think a lot of other people probably did way worse, if not as bad a shit as he did, that somehow didn't find their way into jail. Do I think he deserves 20 years in prison? No, but that's because I don't think he's a real danger to other people or himself. I think he's a danger to like animals, for sure. Yeah, and I think he definitely deserves to if he's guilty, if he did what he did, which was pay someone a very small amount of money with the intention of going and killing someone else, then yeah, he deserves to go to jail for a certain amount of time. Yeah, but the dude's in his like 50s and they gave him 20 years in prison. That doesn't seem like justice to me. I think, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about the law. I'm certainly not a judge, but I would be like, maybe like 5 years in prison or something to like teach the guy a lesson and then like make it so that he can never own another animal for the rest of his life.
Here's what bothers me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm from. Like, I do think he did it. I do think he deserves to be punished. I don't know that he deserves to be punished alone, or as hard as he got it.
So that's my perspective on it. I do believe he should be in prison
for sure.
Like, he committed crimes. he should go to prison.
Also, if you look at like all the shit he talked for years and years and years about how he was going to murder her.
Yeah.
Like, I'll shoot you. Blah, blah, like, okay, yeah, you fucked yourself over. I don't actually think he would ever kill anyone.
Here's the problem, right? And obviously, if you're still listening to this, you've watched the show. Like, the dude willfully violated the other company's copyright. And when he the tiger thing, basically he named his traveling tiger thing the same as Carol Baskin's.
Oh, okay. Can we explain that a little more? Because I had no idea what you were talking about.
So later on in the series, they talk about how he's been embroiled with this back and forth battle with Carol Baskin for years because whatever you believe personally about how these companies operate, Carol Baskin has a tiger sanctuary.
Yeah.
And she is a strong advocate against the exploitation of tigers and big cats, no petting, no handling, etc.
Right.
And Joe Exotic has been basically exploiting big cats and exploiting tiger cubs and, using them, for in magic shows, using them, for petting, whatever. So that they're diametrically opposed on. Well, so Carol has been sort of trying diligently with her group of tiger people to get Joe,
her massive amount of resources
to get Joe shut down. Right. To basically end what Joe does, not specifically him, but also partially. And so sort of in a backhanded manner, he starts this group where he travels around with the tigers for the purposes of them being petted, for them to be handled by people.
Right.
And he names this traveling company basically the same thing as hers, but like with one word difference.
Right. And the logo looks really similar.
And basically, so it all comes down to this lawsuit.
Right.
And obviously he loses because he very deliberately tried to,
it's copyright infringement and he lost.
It reminded me of a Better Call Saul. When he like tries to steal the
picture,
the picture, the logo, like just to piss them off. And I was like, someone actually did this?
Yeah.
And so because of this, he gets sued out the ass.
Yeah.
And he ends up losing all of his money, and that's where that other guy comes in. But so he basically did it to himself.
Yeah.
He screwed himself because he was like, instead of just like letting her be, he antagonized her, stole their intellectual property, and then got sued. And then when he got sued, he tried to hide his funds by giving his money and property to his mother.
Yeah.
And so, that stuff, that's criminal. Like, sorry.
Not only that, but like, I don't know if they ever proved it, but the whole building on his property where all the production materials were that got burnt down, that's also arson. So
well, they don't know whoever did that.
They don't know who did it.
Right.
But like, so basically to kind of recap, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so go ahead and tell that story and then I'll give you an update that I heard about since then.
Okay. So basically like somewhere in the middle of the series where they're talking about this back and forth with Carol Baskins, who, is the quote animal activist, and Joe at some point, and Joe's had a lot of run-ins with PETA. Like, PETA is very anti-Joe Exotic, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's some question about whether Carol Baskin is... Well, there's the show makes you question a little bit with the way that it's edited, whether Carol Baskin is actually purely an animal rights activist, or if this is like something that she's transitioned to, pivoted to after maybe not starting off that way. But anyway, and a lot of the other like zoo creep owners that they interview in the show kind of like call into question, like, she's doing the same thing we're doing. She's just doing it from a different angle. She's still profiting the same way we are. Anyway, so Joe's had a lot of trouble with her. He's had a lot of trouble with PETA. And then so he goes away on a business trip. And then that same weekend, he has a studio where on site he has like an internet TV show called like the it's something to do with his zoo, right?
Yeah.
The Joe Exotic Zoo show. And there's a reality show producer who has come on to help him produce this web series.
His name is Rick Kirkham.
Rick Kirkham. And Rick Kirkham was like a legitimate, like kind of journalist, TV producer guy.
Rick Kirkham was kind of a gonzo journalist. He worked for like, I think Inside Edition and kind of at first he was kind of like a very legitimate, sort of reporter, but then
became an entertainment journalist.
Yeah. They kind of like would put him into scenarios where he was like participating in the news, not just like reporting it. Right.
So anyway, this guy, Rick Kirkman, he thinks that this whole Joe Exotic and the zoo that they have would be a great reality show. And he was right. It would have been a really great reality show. And this was kind of his retirement plan, was to produce this reality show, sell it, make a bunch of money, retire. But in order to get Joe to agree to that, he had to sign a contract saying like, I own the rights to all the footage. And then in return, like, I will help you produce your internet TV show. So there was like a whole production studio at the zoo compound. And then something happened where Joe got concerned that some of the footage that Rick might have had would have gotten him in trouble. And he got an inkling that he might not be portrayed in the best light in the show.
Yeah.
So there's something where someone had a camera in their pocket where Joe is visiting his lawyer. And you see like Joe's lawyer never said to do anything about it, like to set anything on fire. But you can hear in the conversation that like the wheels are turning and that he realizes he might be fucking himself by having all this reality footage out there.
Well, because all this footage is like showing what actually happens on the farm.
Right. Yeah. And like illegal stuff, like people doing things to animals that only veterinarians should do, like just like maybe some violations, some things you could get charged for.
And the speculation is that, he killed cats. They found corpses of cats on the farm after this.
Yeah, like tigers and stuff. So you get the sense that like the way they've edited it, like Joe is concerned that he's going to get fucked by this reality show footage. And Rick Kirkman kind of tells the tale of like, hey, Joe came to him and said, I want this footage back, all this stuff. And there was like a tit for tat. And then shortly, sometime after that conversation, Joe goes away on business to buy or sell a tiger. And then while he's gone, this whole studio that is also attached to a building where they house crocodiles is set on fire. Mm-hmm. And just bursts, like it's a huge fire. Everything gets destroyed. And Joe and some of the other people on the farm blame PETA. Mm-hmm. They blame PETA for coming in and setting fire to one of his buildings. But it's like, it's a little suspicious because Joe happened to be gone at the time.
Right.
And the security staff, like I'm not saying anyone did anything. They don't know. They don't know. The only person that they're like kind of like stroking their beards on, like maybe that they make you think like who could have done it was like, well, Joe wasn't there at the time. He said he was out of town and he was the only person not there. And they don't know. Nobody knows. So Rick Kirkman basically like loses his entire retirement idea, has a nervous breakdown, goes back to Texas, and then like since all of this has happened, what I think this happened in like 2016 or something.
Not really
the fire,
sure.
The fire happened like before the documentary series people were there.
Yeah.
But and that's another thing that's confusing because like you see Rick Kirkman on some of the footage.
It's Kirkham.
Sorry. Yeah. You see Rick Kirkham on some of the footage, but it's not his own footage. All of his footage got completely destroyed. Yeah. So while he was at this zoo filming a reality show, the documentary filmmakers were there just filming this documentary.
For 5 years.
For 5 years, because the story they were trying to tell wasn't about Joe Exotic to begin with. It was about the big cat trade. And that's how they have so much footage of all of these different people in that industry. And then when shit started to go crazy with Carol Baskins and like the criminal charges and the FBI and all that, then they're like, holy shit, this documentary is something completely different than what it started out to be. So anyway, like now Rick Kirkham is doing fine. I guess he's living in Europe or something.
So interesting postscript.
So anyway, postscript to that.
Kirkham.
Yeah.
He, 6 months after the fire that burned down his studio at the park, he had moved, I believe, to Texas. I could be wrong on this, but moved to an apartment. And 6 months later, that apartment was set on fire.
Oh, geez.
And he had to be saved. So he's been the victim of arson twice.
In like a 6-month period?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And in both situations, they have no idea who did it. No one was ever arrested. They have no clue. So,
well, he's okay now, I guess.
yeah, now he lives in Norway, which if I were the victim of arson twice, I would move to fucking Norway too.
Yeah, I would move as far away from these crazy rednecks that own tigers all over this country.
Yeah. It's kind of like hillbilly Game of Thrones.
It is definitely hillbilly Game of Thrones, for sure. So anyway, I feel like I've talked a lot about it, but you're the one there with all the notes. Like, what else? What else was kind of crazy that happened that you wanted to talk about?
So I thought it was very interesting. The Doc Antle guy. So that guy. What I've learned watching this is, if anybody ever approaches you and they're like, "Hey, I've got a tiger. Do you want to pet it?" Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say no and then quickly get away from them.
Right.
And never talk to them again, because clearly everyone who's into like big game, wild animals for pets is a cult having psycho.
It does seem that way. Yeah.
It's like, it's a show about like 3 different cults.
Yeah.
All revolving around the big cat industry.
Right.
And yeah, this Doc Antle guy, I think, is really, one of the weirder characters, like just how, like he has this compound and like women come there and they have to like dress a certain way and change their name. And I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. And he's even in the story because you get the sense in the first kind of episode, I got the sense that he was there as like an outsider perspective. Like they're telling the story about this feud between this Joe Exotic guy and this Carol Baskins woman. And Doc Antle is like the third party giving an outside perspective of this. But Doc Antle kind of owns a zoo similar to Joe Exotic's zoo, but it's a little more upscale.
A little bit classier.
A little classier. He has a little bit more money to play around with. Yeah. He's got elephants, But then they start diving in deeper on this guy, and you're like, holy shit. Yeah. Like all of these people are using the animals to manipulate people and take advantage of. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that the best example of that, like just the raw luring people in with big animals, is Jeff Lowe. So when shit hits the fan for Joe Exotic and he loses all this money and has to come up and pay, these settlements and lawsuits to Carol Baskin, Jeff Lowe kind of comes in. And Jeff Lowe is like this weird, interesting character from Vegas.
Yeah.
Like just a guy who owns cats and needs somewhere to store them. So he kind of swoops in, offering like, hey, I'll invest. Basically, I'll buy in and that's where I'll keep my cats and, whatever. So basically he comes in, bamboozles Joe Exotic and ends up owning the park.
Right.
And this guy's a very bizarre character.
But a very smart con man.
Right. Like by all accounts, he's a scam artist. He's like just and this is where all the shit starts to happen bad for Joe.
Yeah.
And everybody, what really pissed me off about this show is every one of these people who were supposedly like in Joe's corner and people that like, and granted, like Joe's no angel in this. He treated people like shit. He stole from people. He lied.
Yeah.
But every one of these fucking people basically flipped and did everything they could to put him away.
Right.
To save their own ass. And I was like, man, this is a show full of cowards.
Yeah.
Like,
and just shitty people.
Yeah,
like Joe Exotic included.
Yeah. He's terrible.
Yeah. No, he's
a narcissist, a fucking, completely
he's
delusional.
He's not a victim.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I think he got, I would say that like, I wouldn't say in his case, justice was served, in my opinion, appropriately, but he's not, not a victim in all of this. Like he definitely did some messed up shit. But when we recorded this the first time, you asked me kind of like, what did I think of, is it not Rob Lowe? That's an actor. What's his name? Jeff Lowe?
Jeff Lowe, yeah.
Jeff Lowe. What did I think about him? He's so strange in that the way his appearance does not match his tone or demeanor. Yeah. Like he looks like when he speaks and if you just look at his face, he just looks like someone's very thoughtful, logical father.
Yeah, I was just going to say somebody's dad.
He looks like someone's dad who's like, it's like if you had a dad or if your friends had a dad who was like the guy that people would go to for like financial advice or be like, is it smarter for me to put money into savings or to pay down my student loans what percent, he seems like a Republican you would go to for money advice.
Kind of reminds me of like every blue collar dad in like this shitty small town I grew up in, right? Like just, it was a guy who probably worked a manual labor job, but it was a good paying job. He was in a union or something.
Really, he came across to me something completely different. If it weren't for the fact of the way he dressed, he comes across to me as a white collar guy who's very smart, very articulate, and who knows how to handle money and is going to give you sage advice and is going to talk to you in like a reasonable way. That's the way he comes across when he's not talking about women. When women enter the picture, he becomes kind of like a tool.
But he dressed like a Rough Rider.
He dresses like a Rough Rider douchebag. Like the way I cannot reconcile his appearance and his clothing with what the words that come out of his mouth, how articulate he is, or just like his age and his visage.
Not just once in a while. Like it was so striking to me.
Yeah.
When I saw him, like the first time he's on screen and he's wearing like a bandana.
He's got a bandana.
And a hat on. An Oakley hat.
An Oakley backwards hat.
No, the hat was forward.
The hat was forward. Okay, you're right.
To show the logo. And then he's wearing like tight ripped, bejeweled, bedazzled jeans.
Right.
And then like a leather biker jacket.
And an Ed Hardy t-shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Not like a zippery leather jacket. Not like a heavy metal leather jacket. Like a,
motocross jacket. Yeah.
Right. Like a Kawasaki Honda jacket. And he looks like he's, right on the, like low end of 60.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, and he's wearing this the whole time. He's like cleaning a tiger cage and he's dressed this way. And you're like, is he just wearing this because the camera's there and he thinks he looks nice? Like, are these his like court clothes? Like, what's going on?
It's just like always dresses that way.
Right. But he has the most like even toned, logical, upper middle class, Midwestern accent, articulate guy who literally looks like the biggest douchebag in the world.
And his reasons for being into big cats is even more humorous. It's literally to get women for threesomes.
Yeah. That's the whole reason, which is maybe the best reason to have big cats. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
So he gets arrested in Vegas because he's taking tiger cubs and putting them into suitcases and smuggling them into hotels.
Yeah.
And then inviting people to the hotel room to pet the cats.
For a fee.
And then probably do cocaine or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insanity. Yeah.
Also, John Finley, who was the guy missing all the teeth, Joe Exotic's husband, who, spoiler alert, this whole thing's been a spoiler alert, but turns out not gay, apparently. Now married to a woman, has a kid. An interesting postscript, now has a full set of teeth.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. So apparently quit doing meth.
Good for him.
And realized, I'm not gay. I don't need to do meth, and I'll have a woman.
That was the thing that I think was the saddest thing about the show to me, was that a lot of you get the impression in the first episode that Joe Exotic is taking in kind of disadvantaged people that maybe are recovering from alcohol and drugs or have a bit of a criminal record and have a hard time getting jobs other places, and like allowing them to come and work on his farm. You're like, oh, that's nice. But then you're like, oh no, he's kind of just taking advantage of all of these people.
Preying on impoverished people down on their luck, people that can be used like any cult leader.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing I found out about it too was that Joe, like, that wasn't the first time he's been like meeting 19-year-old men and like marrying them for years. Like this is just habitual behavior.
Yeah.
Because we find out after, so he marries two guys.
He's married to two guys at the same time.
Right. And which is totally not legal, but then again, it's just, I don't even know if it was at the time when gay marriage was legal.
Yeah.
So it may not have been legal to begin with.
Right. But both of these guys are straight, but clearly, as you find out, both of them have drug problems.
Yeah, right.
And Joe is able to provide them with what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the one guy kills himself accidentally on purpose, maybe.
Yeah, we don't know.
Kills himself. And then 2 months later, Joe finds another 19-year-old boy. And
man. It's a man.
Yeah, 19-year-old man.
We can accuse Joe Exotic of a lot of things. So far, pedophilia is not one of them.
So ends up marrying him. So it's like a long line of things. It's just very bizarre.
It's very bizarre. It's not for the faint of heart. And it is like a car accident that you can't look away from.
And I want to go even a little step further to quantify the whole cult thing, because there is a person. I didn't write down the person's name, but there's, I believe, a young woman that gets her hand basically mauled by a tiger or lion, and has the hand removed and goes back to work like 2 days later or something like that, and did it so Joe wouldn't look bad,
right? And they caught it on film, right after she was mauled and her hand got eaten by this lion. Like, as they're taking her to the hospital in the ambulance, he's like, I'll never recover financially from this. Yeah. And that's where, like, when I was like, okay, 100% fuck you. I don't care what happens to you now. Like, someone just lost a limb not because they did something bad, but because they're working around dangerous animals and shit like this is going to happen. And you're concerned about losing money. She just lost a hand.
So here's what I'll say at the end. People from Oklahoma clearly are crazy. The person that suggested that I watch this because they grew up in Oklahoma, I get it. You're right. Totally fair assessment. I liked this so much that I want to watch it again. Yeah. Like there are very few documentaries where I'm like, oh, I want to watch that again. Making a Murderer was one where I was like, oh, wow, it's so compelling. Like, I want to watch it again. And I watched it a second time with you. This too, like, for days, I'm like, I want to watch it again. Like, I want to see all the things that I missed.
That's the thing that I think is one of the best things, but actually one of the most infuriating things about this show is that after I was done watching it, I couldn't stop thinking about it, but I didn't want to think. Like, I wasn't like, I wasn't pleased.
Happy about it. Right,
yeah.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, it like got in my brain. And I was like, God, it's just like, not like I was disturbed or upset or anything, but I was just like, this is so weird.
Yeah. If you're into the drama of true crime, if you're into like the train wreck, like what's going to happen next type of thing, I don't know how well these people are portrayed from a realistic perspective. And honestly, I don't feel like it's my place or concern to judge that.
Yeah.
But just as a piece of visual entertainment, it is one of the best documentary series I've seen on Netflix. It is really incredibly compelling.
Like, it's kind of, in a lot of ways, and this is my complete uninformed opinion because I don't know anything about anything when it comes to filmmaking or journalism, but I kind of feel like it's what every documentary filmmaker or journalist wants to have happen, is that they're trying to tell a story and they're investigating something, and as they start to polish away, the dirt and the grime on top of whatever it is they're looking at, they start to get to the truth of the matter. And I feel like you had some folks that wanted to make a documentary about large cat rescues and big cat zoos in this country, whether to praise them or defile them, who knows, but they uncovered something that was a lot more sinister, but was really pervasive and well known within the community of big cat owners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel like they probably stumbled across something that they couldn't have even imagined. So
yeah. So real quick before we wrap up, another piece of information about Rick Kirkham. Rick Kirkham had a documentary made about him in 2006 called TV Junkie. And it's about him being addicted to drugs while working in television. I'm not sure if it's available on Netflix, but check it out. Because apparently it's pretty compelling too.
Yeah. I feel like he's one of, if you had to make a list of people who got screwed the most out of all of this, he's definitely deserves to be on the list of people who got taken advantage of and screwed. A lot of the people who work for Joe, obviously a lot of the people who work for other big cat owners, definitely got a raw deal in this whole story.
Yep.
Not in the story, but just in life, because of how they were taken advantage of and treated by these other people. But yeah. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry we spoiled it. If you have seen it, share your thoughts or opinions with us if you want to. If not, that's cool.
Yeah, we'd love to have a conversation about it. Hit us up on Discord or whatever. Or
we don't
Twitter.
really. I love it. Here's another reason why this is so great. It gives us something else to talk about besides coronavirus.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's taken hold, and so many people are so into it, because because all anybody talks about ever is coronavirus.
Yeah. Well,
it's so hard not to always be talking about that.
And I think that the other thing too is like it's real life, but it's so ridiculously outlandish that there's not, there's maybe 20 people in the world that would watch that and go, oh yeah, I completely relate. Like it's so outlandish and so ridiculous. It's like indulging in fantasy.
Right.
So yeah, it's a great show. It's a great show with a very terrible backdrop, but highly entertaining in that regard.
Very, very binge-worthy. So. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for listening. We don't know exactly what we're going to have on our next episode, but stay tuned for that. If you have any suggestions on things you'd like us to watch, or just anything like that, hit us up on Twitter or message us on Discord.
You had mentioned last time, if there's any like games that are great for two people to play, whether they're board games or something that we can order on the internet, or even like, video games, we both have, we have access to an Xbox. But, remember, we can't go out. Like, we can't go do other things besides just like stay at home and consume media. So if there's anything that you think we should try out, let us know. Also, like, if you want to suggest something and you maybe want to be on a podcast to talk about it, let us know. We haven't had a lot of guests, but we do have them occasionally. So.
Yeah.
All right.
It happens.
Well, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we hope you enjoyed. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, folks. This is Rachel from UtilityMuffinLabs.com. If you enjoyed the Playing Hooky podcast, think about supporting us. For more podcasts, art, videos, and gaming, go to UtilityMuffinLabs.com. Follow our podcast on Twitter @HookyPodcast, on Instagram and Facebook at our Utility Muffin Labs name, and support us on YouTube at Utility Muffin Labs. Check out our other gaming-related podcasts, 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade and the Nerd Words podcast. Thank you all for your support. Utility Muffin Labs, consistently rated adequate.